I now reconvene the regular council meeting for Monday, February 23rd, 2026. Before we move on, we'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting has been held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, February 23rd, 2026? And we'll please Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of Monday, February 9th, 2026? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, guys. I'll now recess the regular council meeting and go into our public hearing for tonight. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act to consider the following bylaws. City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan, our Path to Cranbrook 2042 Bylaw Amendment number 4232 2026. And secondly, City of Cranbrook Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4233 2026. This public hearing has been held in person and electronically with residents and interested parties being given the opportunity to express their views. This meeting is being broadcast live on the city's website, and there's a link on the home page that will take you directly to this meeting. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws will be given an opportunity to be heard. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to the matters contained in the bylaws, and it is my responsibility as chair of this meeting to ensure that all marks are so restricted. Members of council may ask you questions following your submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public and not debate the merits of the proposed bylaws with individual citizens. Those of you who wish to speak concerning the proposed bylaws should, at the appropriate time, begin by clearly stating your name and address, then give us the benefit of your views. You will be given 5 minutes for your submission. I will call for submission 3 times for each bylaw. Once a public hearing is closed, members of council cannot take any further input regarding the proposed bylaws and will then deal with the bylaws during the regular meeting of council held at the public hearing after the public hearing. The first bylaw for consideration tonight is the proposed City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan, our Path to 2042 Bylaw Amendment number 4232 2026. The bylaw proposes the following amendments to the official community plan. Change the land use designations for portions of the subject properties, lots 218 and 219, from parks and recreation to medium density residential. And change the land use designation of newly legally dedicated park on Plan EPP 143958 from medium density residential to parks and recreation. The purpose of the proposed OCP amendment is to designate and zone the newly dedicated parklands to facilitate a medium density multifamily development. The base maximum allowable density in the R5 zone is 60 dwelling units per hectare. The proposed R5 development site is 0.313 hectares in the size which would allow for a maximum of 19 dwelling units. I will call on any members of the public who are in the chamber tonight to speak first. If you wish to provide comments, please come up to the podium, provide your name and address before your comments. If you are on the phone line waiting to speak, callers will be identified by the last 2 digits of their phone number, or if you have pre-registered, we will call you by name. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be allowed to unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you will have your opportunity to provide us with your views. If you have not pre-registered and wish to speak, please press *3 on your phone to signal staff you wish to address council. I will now call for first time for submissions. Anybody wish to speak? Yeah. You. You could provide us your name and address, please.
Forgot to push the button. There we go. My name is Brenna Hong and my address is 442 15th Avenue South, Cranbrook. So I just need to clarify, is this just for the proposed development going to the medium density housing, or is it including the changing to parkland as well? Like both of them? That was in the letter that was sent to us? Okay, so I can address both of the changes that you're doing. Okay, or you're proposing. I did send a letter, which I think all of you have received, so I won't go into detail on that. But I did really want to be clear that it is my understanding that the land that is now being offered as Parks and Recreation was originally part of the broader medium density development currently underway. The luxury condos that they're putting in. When I used to be the chair of the St. Mary's School Board, and we used to own that land, and it included the little bit of parkland across the creek. So I'm just wondering, you're saying you're going to change that into parkland, but realistically, nobody can build on that land anyways because it's too close to the creek. Is that correct, or are you allowed to answer that, or am I just giving comments here?
We're not in a position where council will answer individual questions.
Okay.
We may question later when we come up for the amendment. We may ask that question of our engineering staff.
Okay, and my other question, which probably can't be answered, but that was owned by the people that purchased the land. So I'm wondering how that became city land in the first place. And it's within 30 meters of a fish-bearing creek as well. So I'm not sure if provincial laws apply to that or if the city has their own laws. So I'm just concerned because to me, it's not giving the citizens of Cranbrook a true picture of you're taking away parkland, but then you're giving back some parkland to the residents of Cranbrook when no one would build on that land anyways, that you're offering to change to parkland. Also, I just wanted to ask what kind of archaeological assessments will be done on that land. As we all know that there has been artifacts found around Idawell Park as well, around the lake there. So I just want to know what kind of assessments are going to be done and if there's consideration with the Tanaka people with the proposed development of the parkland. Sorry. I have lived in this neighborhood for 25 years, and I chose to purchase my home here because it is a residential area surrounded by green space and parkland. That character, open space, trees, and a sense of community is not incidental. It is the reason that many of us have remained there for decades. This is an established older neighborhood with many, many long-term residents. I walked around our neighborhood with my neighbor a couple weeks ago when we got this notice and talked to many, many people. They've been there for decades. So what is this development going to do to our property values and to us living there? Currently, they're building luxury condos there, and we've heard nonstop construction for months and months that go on all day. And now we have the green home going in, and now there's going to be this building. I didn't buy my house there to be surrounded by large multi-density housing. So I really respectfully urge council to protect this land and reconsider. I am all in favor of seniors housing, like just as much as anybody else, and we do need more housing in Cranbrook, but we need to stop using the green space. There's other areas that I hope the city of Cranbrook will look at and leave the land there as is. Thank you.
Thank you for your views, Brenna. The gentleman in the front.
push it. Oh, it's already going. My name is Jeffrey Williams. I live at 450 15th Avenue South, adjacent to the properties we're considering. I've written my council, all you have received a letter from me a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm not going to address that issue any further. The thing that I have concerned about is you're asking us to consider accepting this change of zoning where you want to put the senior housing. And I think what we need to know and able to say, yes, this is a good thing or it's not a good thing, is to see the actual project. What are they going to do? What kind of parking they're going to have? What facilities are they going to have for that kind of stuff? And when I asked, I'm not sure, Mr. Vague, I don't know how he pronounces his name. I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago and I asked that question. Oh, we have no information on that. So I'm thinking you're asking us to do, so proves a pig in the poke. And I think back, 50 years ago, well, 45 years ago, when I came to town in 1976, and I wanted to, we needed dentists, a dentist that came in, we needed a place to build our building, and we proposed a place that was up near the hospital. Before we would even be able to be addressed, we had to have exact plans presented with showing the whole footprint, everything else. And then they asked the neighbors and they said, no, they thought that was going to be too much traffic and it was denied. At least then they had something specific to say, okay, we don't want that in our neighborhood. So that little strip of land right adjacent to the parking lot of the school there is quite a slope. And there's already this new development there. I can't see how there's going to be any parking for visitors to be there. Those condos have double garage, as it looks like, and that's fine. But the little alleyways that they have to, I don't think there's any place that visitors could park there. The parking in that area is always already very congested. And we have school kids going in there, but a lot of them are driven in there because it's a private school. So people are coming from all over the city to be there. The traffic comes there 3 times a day, lunchtime and beginning and at the end of the day. There's a lot of traffic there. And so what if we have 16 or whatever you said, up to 19 units of senior housing, which is a good idea to have senior housing. I agree with that. But what's it going to look like? Is it going to be multi-housing? Is there going to be parking for those people there? That whole area around beside the Green Home and along 17th and around that road that approaches the school is already very, very congested. And so I just think before the council says, yes, we'll let this go, we'll rezone that area for multi-housing, until we see specifically what they want to do, I think we shouldn't do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your views. Further from the gallery? Yeah. The corner.
Charlene Rothwell. I live at 400 15th Avenue South. First, I would like to say I've received no mail notice about this development, as well as the condos that they're building. I've received nothing. My neighbors have informed me of it. I'm curious as to why that would be. But I share Brenna and Dr. Jeff's opinions. The traffic is a major thing, but also the density of people that are there. I have noticed that the creek has deteriorated. The riverbank or the creek banks have come down. I personally have lost over 5 feet of my backyard because of the water. And that is mainly because of the big culvert that was put in the creek up from the developments that brought water down from Southview a few years ago. I've been informed by Department of Oceans and Fisheries, which is where I was referred to, that there's nothing I can do about it. I do have rock in it, so that's done. But I think that the more development that we put alongside a creek, where it should basically be left as green space for people to enjoy, is going to just deteriorate the creek, therefore the fisheries and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from the gallery? Members of the gallery? Certainly, you've got 5 minutes, pro or con on this issue, absolutely.
There we go. My name is Rick Jensen, and I am the president of the Rotary Club of Cranbrook. In 1966-67, the Rotary Club built the Scott Rotary Villa, which was 12 single-family units, 6 one-bedroom and 6 studio units, and they were rented to seniors who were income challenged, needed the support. Over the last 59 years, it's estimated, we don't have the records all the way back to the exact count of residents, seniors that have used that project, but we're guessing that it's around 225 seniors that have had the benefit of the less expensive accommodation. This year, the Rotary Club decided that we are in a position to do another villa, and we approached the city if there was land available. One of the real benefits of the Scott Villa, the older Scott Villa, is that it is so close to downtown. The doctor's offices, the Safeway, and other services that seniors need. So there aren't many vehicles in the existing Scott Villa. We proposed to the city we saw this piece of land and asked if that was appropriate for this type of a development. What we propose is 4 buildings, 4 one-bedroom units, 440 square feet, and they are single-story, so there's no height problems as far as obstructing views or anything. There are 12 parking stalls in the front, and there's an access road. Again, we believe that there will not be many resident vehicles. There may be some, but there certainly won't be a vehicle per unit, because the type of senior that takes advantage of this type of home doesn't have a vehicle. And that creates the need to have it close to the downtown core, if at all possible. There is room for, as the mayor suggested, 19 units. That's too big of a project for us. So there are 12 units, 3 buildings, and then there's an office on the side of the middle building, and I'm certainly prepared to show those plans to anyone that has an interest in it. I can certainly show those plans. We propose that if we are able to build on that site, we would start construction in all likelihood in July or August of this year, and it would be complete in July or August of 2027. So it would be about a 12-month build. The slope, the project is going to have to confirm with the high water mark, and a study is being done right now on the high water mark, so that there's no habitable space below that high water mark. There's still things that we need to get approved on our project. So it's preliminary at this point, and we thought that the first one is there land available, and if so, where is it? And then once we identified that land, what type of a project could we put on it that we could afford to build to double the Rotary senior housing. So over the next 50, 60 years, we suspect that there will be another 225 plus or minus seniors that are able to take advantage of that, to have independent living, so that they enjoy their retirement as best they can.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Any further comments from the gallery? Certainly.
My name is Gail Brown. I live at 428 15th Avenue South, and that property abuts to the park area. I went to engineering at the city of Cranbrook in July, and I asked to look at a city map because I wanted to see the designation of the piece of property behind my house. There was some talk about what it was actually designated as. When I looked at the map, it said unnamed park. When I received the letter from the city, the area of the park is not designated on this map. And this is not a map. This is something else. So I really don't think people can appreciate what we're talking about here. I think it's really difficult for people to understand in an unnamed area, part of which is natural and part of which is mode, what we're actually talking about. So it distresses me to see people trying to understand the area by looking at something like this without an engineering map in front of them. And it's amazing to me that it could be changed in some way. I can't really tell you how, in some way, to allow for development. We do not want our parks to become development areas. We want them to become parks. Now, there was some talk that some of this park area is unsightly. That is an opinion. It doesn't describe the park. I understand that either the contractor that's building the adjacent 3-story condos, either he dumped gravel there or the city dumped gravel there to make it unsightly. Also, there is heavy equipment parked there. So actually the area of the park is being kind of, I don't know, changed by development. I don't like that. The other thing that really upsets me is that we have an official community plan. This council worked on our official community plan. And the First Amendment is to change that. I think that's wrong. I don't think we should be doing that. I think we and you should uphold what's already in the plan and work within it. The other thing that's not on this picture, but was also on the engineering map that I saw, was a lane allowance that runs behind my house. It looks like this picture, looks like there's no lane allowance, but we have services that run behind our house that need a lane allowance for those services. So there are things that just aren't really clear. So this unnamed park, I'd like to give it a name. I'd like it to be called Joseph Park. I don't know what anybody else would like, but I would like it to have a name, because then we can actually talk about it. And then we can go to engineering and say, what's happening with Joseph Park? In the last 8 months, there's been a lot of talk in our area about infrastructure. How are the services to the large development that's at the corner, plus the green home, how are the infrastructure, how is it going to serve all these people? So we have 32 condos being built, and then we have the green home being upgraded and built, and a new addition built. Is my toilet still going to flush? Is my water still going to be freely running? I'm worried about that. And I think, maybe the school is worried too. So, those are kind of the things. Like, the other thing I'm worried about is something that we all have concerns about, and that's climate change. We know kind of what old high water marks were in that area, but we have no idea what they're going to be in the future. No, none at all. So anything that runs near the creek, like my house, and is adjacent to the creek like my house, we're a bit worried about that.
1 minute, Gil.
Thank you. So I just wanted to bring up some of those concerns of mine. They're shared by other people. And I just hope that you will consider them seriously. Now, you may not be back for the next go round of, being on city council. That'll be in October. If you're not back, it's just off your plate and you don't have to think about it anymore. And somebody else will make a decision based on what you decide here. That's really worries me. That worries me. You're talking about development. Anybody can do development, not just, our Rotary Club. So once the land is moved out of your jurisdiction into, a medium density housing, you've lost some control, but you won't be there. So any protections that you're offering now may not stand. And that worries me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your views. Further comment from the gallery? Any comment on the phone lines or online?
So Mayor Price, we have no online registered speakers and we have no new speakers coming in online.
Okay, thank you. I will now call a second time for submissions. Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I just had one more ask of city council is to truly reconsider. I am all for Rotary's development, you know that. I think it's really important, but I think we need to pick a different space and not parkland. For example, is Baker Park even an option? It sits empty 90% of the year, the RV park. That would be a perfect place, and it's closer to downtown. So there's other options. I support that project 110%. I do not support it in parkland in our neighborhood.
Thank you very much. I now call a third and final time for submissions. Hearing no further comments, I now close the public hearing for the proposed City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan, Our Path to Cranbrook 2042 Bylaw Amendment number 4232 2026. The next bylaw for consideration tonight is the proposed City of Cranbrook Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4233 2026. The bylaw proposes the following amendments to the zoning bylaw. Change the zoning designations for portions of the subject properties, lots 218 and 219, from Community Recreation Zone P2 to medium density multiple family residential R5, and change the zoning of the newly legally dedicated park from medium density multiple family residential R5 to Community Recreation Zone P2. The purpose of the proposed zoning amendment is to designate and zone the newly dedicated parklands and to facilitate a medium-density multifamily development. The base maximum allowable density for R5 zone is 60 dwelling units per hectare. The proposed R5 development site is 0.313 hectares in size, which would allow for a maximum of 19 dwelling units. I will now call a first time for submissions. Anybody in the gallery want to speak? No? Okay. Anything online, Mark? Nothing.
Mayor Price, there's no registered speakers online or nobody's joined online.
Thank you. I will now call a second time for submissions. And finally, I'll call a third and final time for submit. Oh, you caught her.
There we go. I have to say, I'm confused. These things sound like the same project.
Yes.
And so I really don't know what's happening here. So I don't know what to say, except this is very confusing to me. And when so I went with Brenna 2 weeks ago and we surveyed everybody who was adjacent to this property around that, what we thought was the green belt. And that was something that we heard time after time after time. They said, we don't know what's going on. This thing back in the paper and this doesn't, it's not clear. We don't understand what's going on. And so, and I tried the best I could to figure out, and I just don't know what you're talking about, how this is different from what we just did 15 minutes ago. So I'm sorry, I just don't understand what's going on.
Not a problem. Supervisor, do you want to explain?
So, sir, just so you're aware, the two public hearings, it's me speaking. So the two public hearings are, one is the OCP amendment, because the OCP is the high level document that guides the future of Cranbrook. Zoning is the current zoning in place. So the OCP amendment needs to be first, and then the zoning change is second. So they're two separate processes, two separate documents. And so the public hearing number one was the OCP. This is the public hearing for the zoning change.
So I will now call a third and final time for submissions. Hearing no further comments, I now close the public hearing for the proposed City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4233/2026. I reconvene the regular council meeting for Monday, February 23rd, 2026. First bylaw for consideration tonight is from Public Works Department regarding the cemetery amendment bylaw number 4227/2026, which is back for council tonight for adoption. Can I get a motion that council adopt cemetery bylaw amendment bylaw number 4227/2026? A mover, please, Councillor Ray, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next bylaw for consideration tonight is from our Engineering and Development Services Department regarding the proposed zoning amendment to property located at 824 4th Street Northwest. I'll ask staff to give us an overview of this report, please. Connor? Yep.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sorry, I got distracted there for a second. So this was an application to rezone at 824 4th Street Northwest, which is just located just east of the Farbrook Auto. So this was submitted and has been requested to rezone the subject property from M3 heavy industrial and transportation zone to R1 residential zone. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the current infill residential land use designation under the OCP. And the R1 residential zoning would support subdivision and would permit single detached homes, 2, 3, or 4 unit residential buildings per the new legislation, so up to 4 units each. The applicant has expressed their intention to further subdivide the site should all municipal and provincial approvals as well be granted and the site receive this rezoning. No application for subdivision has been made at this time as there are provincial referrals that are going through the process at this time. The proposed rezoning from M3 to R1 is in line with the continued residential nature of the surrounding neighborhood. Almost every parcel is residential R1 with the exception of to just the north is residential transition, and then there's an R7 zone just close by. And then the adjacent parcel to the west, I believe, is Farbrook Auto, which is M3 industrial. So there would be some separation of use if they were to go forward with development from that M3 zone to the residential zone. This is in line with our OCP currently because the land use designation is infill residential currently, but it's zoned M3. So as per the new legislation that came from the province last summer, we're required to have a notice go out for no public hearing. So that was published in the Kootenai Advertiser as well as around the city notice boards and on our website. 2 referrals will have to be made to the province. So one, since it's within 800 meters, just within the 800 meters of controlled access highway, it'll have to go to the Ministry of Transportation for approval. And the other one is it was identified by the Ministry of Environment as requiring further investigation into remedial measures that need to be taken. And so it'll require approval from the Ministry of Environment as well as the Ministry of Transportation. If there's any questions, I can.
Pardon me. Thank you very much, Connor. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment by law number 4229, 2026? Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky. Councillor Popov. Discussion. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Connor, just looking at the map here, it seems to be kind of in a mix between, half of a residential neighborhood and then industrial to the other side. But there's also a non-conforming, is it a duplex on the property?
Yeah, so the existing use of the site right now, there's a duplex, residential duplex, and then a accessory garage unit as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've heard it quite a bit that there's a shortage of industrial land within city limits. But given that this is in a residential neighborhood with a residence on the property, could you foresee this becoming an industrial lot at some point?
So so currently it could exist as an industrial lot because it's got its M3 zoning. However, it has a non-conforming use that's a residential use. So it makes it difficult to develop regardless on that lot just because of the non-conformity. Also, just because our OCP already has identified the entire area, not just that parcel, but Farbrook as well under our OCP is infill residential. So there's quite a bit of residential there. However, I could see it going either way, but it will still need the same, regardless of what type of development goes on, any change in use will require the Ministry of Environment to sign off on it. So it still has the same amount of hurdles to jump through, regardless of the type of development that goes forward on the site, if that answers your question.
Okay, no, it does. Thank you.
Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. So Connor, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not the property that there was a number of letters of concern about the industrial use? Well, yeah, in the fall?
Yes, yeah. Back in the fall, we received, so there was initially the applicant had wanted to locate an industrial use on the property. And so they started some development along that area. And that was when we received all of the letters. And so the applicants they were flexible in their approach to what they were going to do with it. So they're moving towards doing residential subdivision, exploring what that looks like. And right now we're just considering if the zoning as a use is appropriate for the site. But yes, this is the same property.
So we actually might have the potential for neighbors to be happy? Just wondering.
Yeah, it's a rare thing, but it could happen. Not guaranteed.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bissett. Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Can I get a motion to council give second reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4229, 2026? Councillor Ray, Councillor Bissett, Discussion? Just to follow up on Councilor Bassett's comment, but certainly we did receive a number of letters of concern, that they were concerned about, heavy industrial being built on that property, and then again, transportation, heavy industrial transportation corridor through there. That were their primary concerns. So certainly I would think that, a residential R1 development would alleviate any concerns that those residents had up there. So, I acknowledge the proponent for bringing this recommendation forward. Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, guys. Can I get a motion that council give third reading to the City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4229, 2026? Mover, please, Councilor Bassett. Councilor Popoff. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next bylaw for consideration is also from an Engineering Development Services Department regarding property located on 5th Street South. Both the OCP and zoning amendments are back before council for consideration of third reading and adoption after the public hearing earlier this evening. Can I get a motion that council, subject to consideration of the public hearing input received up to and including the public hearing of February 23rd, 2026, council give third reading to City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan or Path to Cranbrook 2042, amendment bylaw number 4232, 2026. Mover, please. Councilor Bassett, Councilor Peabody. Discussion. Councilor Stetsky.
So I went out to the area again this last week and had a look at it. And when we're looking at these kinds of things, one of the comments that stuck with me earlier was it would be nice to actually have kind of a site location map so that we know, for example, when we look at this proposed development, where it sits on that particular property. Because if it backs up against the St. Mary's fence line, then there's still green space, certainly in front of where this development would go between there and the creek. And of course, the subject area avoids getting too close to the creek regardless. But it would have been great to kind of picture, and I'm not sure, CAO Percho, whether you can help with, or planning can help in terms of where this might be located on that particular piece of land.
So Councillor Stetsky through the mayor, I guess, like the decision in front of council now is the rezoning, the OCP amendment, the rezoning, and there's within those zones, there are setbacks on the property and height minimum or maximums. And so should the proponent want to exceed those, there would be a variance required, and that potentially would require more consultation. But at this point, really, it is the zoning would change it to within the parameters as set out by the zone. And although the proponent or potential proponent has offered to provide plans, the decision around dispositional lands subsequent to any rezoning change has not been made yet to really affirm that in terms of drawings. So at this point, I think procedurally it would be prudent to stick with the minimums and maximums as set out by the zone as for setbacks from the edges of the property and heights and density and whatnot. So we could certainly, craft that. But again, we've had a little discussion a little outside of that today, but that's any disposition of the property and subsequent development. Those decisions have not been made by council. Similarly, they haven't made a decision yet on zone change.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the things, I think this is an important development, quite frankly, and depending on where and how it's located, I think it can fit in that particular piece of land. But for me, it raised that larger question, and one of the things that I really appreciate is how much the citizens of Cranbrook express their interest in ensuring that park space, at least going ahead into the future, remains as parks. And as you know, many of these green areas around town contain the same designation, community recreation zone, which is why at one point we were looking at a daycare in another park here in the city, and we saw the reaction to that. So I don't know whether you can actually fit it into planning staff's workload this year, but at some point I think we need to put forward a plan that reassures the citizens of Cranbrook going forward in terms of which green spaces are actually going to always be there as parks. Because as you know, right now, there are at least 5 different things that can happen on many of our green spaces.
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, that is a great point. We have seen through a few different land use exercises that the allowable uses especially in the P2 zone, does allow for community recreation use, which is a lot of conventional park use. It does also allow for libraries, community theaters, tourist information facilities, cemetery, group daycare, public meeting facility, public and social services. Those are all traditionally developments or built developments and services that would happen on a P2 site. So the P2 designation does not mean green space, undevelopable parkland. Through the work that we're doing right now is we are looking at updating the zoning bylaw, and one of those considerations is creating new P subzones to allow for one of those zones to be considered something that would not allow for or would be more designated as undevelopable green space, or minimizing the types of structures that would be allowed there that would be complementary to a traditional community recreation use. So that would be looking at a green space that may have a gazebo or some other type of structure, but without having more of an institutional development on there. So that is duly noted through the zoning process, zoning bylaw update that will involve public and council engagement. We're going to look at creating those zones. When it comes to designating properties, that would be another future exercise, but at least giving us the tools to consider that is a nearer term exercise that we're working on as we speak. And then when it comes to applying those zoning designations to other property that may want to be identified as maybe protected further from the type of development that the P2 zone does allow, that would be an additional exercise or initiative beyond that.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, I was wondering if you could comment on like a just bigger picture for the community's understanding. When we look at an official community plan, once it's established, is it written in stone for the period of that official community plan, or is it more of a living document that from time to time amendments are considered?
Councillor Ray, through the mayor, that is a great question. The official community plan is our highest form of policy, but it is considered a guiding document. So that is a bit of a challenge, as there is a desire that it does set the tone and the general nature of the types of development and future land uses that are in those areas. But the challenge that does come with an OCP is it doesn't get into the minute details of a lot of different individual properties. So it looks at neighborhoods or larger areas and looks at future uses, and then often there can be conflict within adjacent uses. Similar to the previous item that came forward, there's often buffer zones or barriers between industrial and commercial and residential and other uses. So in those areas where you do see transitions, it can change. And now that we're seeing more desire for housing and housing development with some of the provincial initiatives that are coming forward, there's also sometimes being seen as more flexibility or more desire to be more nimble and dynamic and consider those changes. But again, the future land use designation in the OCP is for a reason, and that's to make sure that these items are brought forward for consideration rather than having, the latitude to do anything with it be done by staff. And that's why we're having this, the public hearing and the process that we have today.
Thank you very much. So Mike, would it be fair to say, like, from time to time, it's pretty typical that amendments come forward to the OCP over the life of an OCP?
Yes, it's with our previous OCP and with this OCP, it's not uncommon to see it happen several times a year. We certainly want to look at that and make sure that it's not an indication of any overarching concern within the OCP, and that they're more unique situations or opportunities that present themselves.
Thank you. And then the other question I just wanted to touch on briefly. So the report refers to change the land use designation of newly legally dedicated park. So briefly, can you describe the process that designated that newly legally dedicated park? That was separate from what we're seeing today, it sounds like.
The park dedication portion that is a part of the rezoning in the OCP is something that, council provided direction to make sure that that was subdivided from the remainder of the parcel and dedicated. So I think that's one of the challenges, and certainly, even from staff and public and council's perspective, is the term park. We see it used in a lot of different connotations, and I think what truly protects park land is having it be legally dedicated as park, and to remove it as such is a much higher threshold compared to a rezoning or OCP process, and then that's sort of what we're encountering a little bit here today.
Thank you.
Councilor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, I wonder if you can give us a little bit of a history of why this parcel of land was selected, as opposed to other land that the city owns, and if there's any challenges with some of the other pieces of property that the city has that maybe made this project not appropriate for a different location.
Councillor Peabody, through the mayor. I think when we're looking at this property here, from staff's perspective, we're trying to separate the suitability of the future land use a little bit and make sure that that's being considered independently of the proposals that have been brought forward from Rotary. And I know those are both considerations that are happening at the same time, so it's hard to not recognize that there is some intertwining there, but we're trying to make sure that we're understanding that the decision in front of council today is looking at is this future land use suitable for the site, and that is regardless of future development or disposition. From that perspective, when it comes to the engagement that's happened with Rotary through council and then to staff for consideration, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Rotary necessarily, but it was looking at a project site, and it was spoken to in the public hearing that would reflect the needs of the type of development that they are looking at. Part of that is considering the size. This is a lot that is the size that would work with this type of nonprofit housing provider. Whereas a much larger property may have other uses that could have more higher, better use, or more density or scale that wouldn't necessarily be suitable for this type of nonprofit housing provider, similar to the work that we did with Habitat Humanity and the process that happened there. So I think from staff's perspective, if we were to look at it from looking at available city properties and what use is, the size of it fits. It is a medium family density, so it's not a high density. It's a medium density residential. And from an infrastructure and servicing impact perspective, it's not a concern either. So from the perspective of the proposed use outside of council's role in understanding whether or not this is suitable type of use, there's nothing that's really incongruent from staff's perspective with the proposal that Rotary has put forward to council.
Supplemental, if I may. Okay, thank you for that answer. So, no, if this rezoning is approved, um, obviously no, that doesn't designate the property for Rotary by any means. So let's say Rotary backs away from this project and someone else comes in. What, being zone medium density, what could potentially be built on this property?
Okay, Councillor Peabody through the mayor. So a, the medium density multifamily is an R5 zone. So within the R5 zone, you can have townhouses, you can have apartments, you can have a congregate care apartment. So these are just, this is coming right off of the bylaw. There's accessory uses that you can have to that primary use. It does speak to within the zoning bylaw that regulates, you know, the density and it regulates the siting of the building. So approving the zoning does allow potentially to permit any development that would fit within those R5 uses, townhouse, apartment, a congregate care apartment. From council's perspective, with the city being the owner of the property, council has every right to consider any additional restrictions or terms as a part of any future disposition, regardless of who that disposition may be. So if council were to consider any restrictions or stipulations that are outside of the zoning, we would have that right to consider those through the disposition process, whether those would sit in a restrictive covenant, or whether if it's a housing project like this, often we've entered into long-term leases, and long-term leases may give us even more flexibility to not just restrict the form of development, but to work directly with the user and the operator to make sure it's fitting what council believes is in the best interest of the development of that site.
Okay, one more if I may. So if we did, decide to put a restrictive covenant on this property, that would be done after the rezoning. Is that correct?
Mayor through to Councillor Peabody, that's correct, but council currently could signal strongly to staff that that would be the next step that we'd come back with.
And by signaling, we just raise our fist?
We would get the message. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the questions and the information that has come forth. You know, I'm pleased that we had the public hearing and that we had the feedback from the public, because when we were first approached and we knew that this was coming forward, I'm around that area all the time. I'm at St. Mary's School every week, and I walk through the path in the summertime. In fact, I've stopped walking on that path because I have a dog, and there's often deer in the high grass in that area, because it is mostly just high grass. And so we avoid, and it's been a good place for fawns to be born. And so we avoid that. And so I really wasn't aware of how valuable this was to the neighbors. Because, first of all, even in looking at the map, there isn't any other than St. Mary's School that abuts onto this piece of property. Many of the people that wrote in and spoke tonight aren't adjacent to this. They're across the river from it. They're actually a substantial distance from it, or they're on the neighboring roads and they're concerned about traffic. But it did bring to mind the issues of what people are concerned about. So they seem to be concerned about the increase in traffic. Well, in this area we're looking at, as was stated, there will be parking for units, and roads are meant to be driven on that are adjacent to it. So, I mean, yes, if there are traffic issues in that area, as these developments go forward, we can maybe do things to adjust the traffic flow in that area, whether it's stop signs or whatever. As far as the concerns about green space, I do think, as our Director of Engineering was saying, we might be able to do something in the design stage to make sure that green space is left around the development that proceeds there. And there certainly is no shortage of green space in that area. On the other side of St. Mary's School is a very large field that is all green space adjacent to Kinsman Park. And so I'm not sure that there's any other area in town that has as much green space as around that part of town. So I think those needs are being looked after. And but we are short of seniors housing. And we are sort of a low-income housing, and that's why people come, those groups come to us because they can't afford to buy a piece of land in addition to the building. We are short of extra space in the city that the city owns. We don't own a lot of property. I think I would say the school district is in charge of the largest amount of property in town, and groups might have to approach them in future. But at this point, this piece of land is available. It's not being used. We aren't going to make it into a formalized park. That's not part of the city's plans. And I think it can accommodate this use. So I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You know, the speakers today and also from all the letters that were submitted, I think there's truly was though some real confusion looking at the map, looking at the two pieces that one we want to put into park and the other we want to take out of park for medium density. Anyway, that being said, I think it's important that the property from the condos that are being built, we put that into parkland to protect that section of Joseph Creek. We don't want more development on there. Let's keep that as natural green space. And also I'm reading in our council notes with respect to the piece of land for development alongside St. Mary's School parking lot, it was never really historically designated as parkland. There's been some back, according to the notes here, there was not designated on any lands as parks. So I think we're calling it parkland, but the reality, it's been long time established green space, just like the condo development that everyone's been referring to as well. Those that have lived in the nearby neighborhoods have seen this huge swath of green space, and they think it's always going to be green space. It was 9 years ago that the council that I was part of, we rezoned that green space for that medium density, which is now under construction. So green space does change to other purposes. And I think, you know, that's the conversation we're having here today. And yes, I mean, if this goes forward, council, the city, because we own that land, we can actually control what, if anything, we want to have on that property. So it's not going to be some crazy development. It'd be something modest. And I think, you know, what Rotary's proposing might be exactly what we're looking for. So green space, parkland is not always going to be green space. It is subject to, especially if it's private ownership, it's subject to change. And we've seen that in other parts of the neighborhood is in Cranbrook. And, you know, that's just how green space gets developed, because it was maybe a private ownership that we took for granted that was going to be green space in perpetuity.
Thank you. I'll get to Councillor Stetsky second time around here. I'll make a quick comment. Certainly, council's role, certainly with city-owned properties, is to determine what we feel is the best use of that land. We have a housing needs assessment. You know, that is something that was mandatory that you know, the province required. Senior housing was one of the top priorities for the city of Cranbrook, and not just senior housing, low-income housing. What these seniors will pay, I would almost suggest that if they have no other means than to live there, there's likely that some of them will be on the street. So we have to think about, number one, what's the best use for that land? And what's in the best interest of our community? I look at this and park space, and you know, we've had several rounds in the last 2 years about park space. Councillor Blissett just mentioned, I would suggest that there's more green space and park space in that area of town than anywhere else in the city of Cranbrook. You know, and if you want park space, you've got a school right there that's got acres and acres of park space for kids. Next door, you've got Kinsman Park that's wide open. There is going to be a small block of park space that is still going to be in that immediate area. And all we've done is trade off some residential for park and park for residential. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. So, any concerns? I certainly think about traffic or adverse neighborhood, impact from the occupants. I don't think that's an issue. I don't even know if there's 3 cars parked down on the Scott Villa. I don't think there's 3 cars parked down there. These people can't afford cars for the most part. So I don't think that's, let's be honest, seniors, some of them do have mobility issues and other issues. They're not going to be a concern for the residents in the area. So I guess where I'm at is we had an opportunity here. We had an opportunity by a group, a nonprofit group comes forward, whether it's Rotary or any other nonprofit. One thing that council did in our housing needs assessment, we formed a housing task force, Mayor's Task Force on Housing, and we prioritized what council should represent. What should our priorities be? Our priorities were senior housing and worker housing. This fits what what City Council's use of our land was going to be utilized for. So for me, it just aligns everything. This is an infill project, really. It was a small piece of land that I highly doubt would ever be developed into park space. Why would we develop that into park space? You have all that green space and park space around it. And you got to remember one thing, people don't want their taxes going up. We hear it all the time. Develop a park and see what it costs to maintain that park going forward. That would be a cost to the citizens of Cranbrook going forward. I think this is absolute perfect value for that land. And, I think it fits really, really well within the council's mandate and priority. Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this evening in the public hearing, there were a couple of issues brought up. One was around additional traffic, and I think that's been talked about, and in terms of not really being much additional traffic. The other one was about the capacity for sewer and water in that area. There is a lot of development going on, and so I'd like to hear from our engineering staff in terms of capability for sewer and water in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Councillor Stetsky through the mayor. Those are great questions and things that we definitely need to consider. One of the primary concerns that was coming up a few years ago was sewer capacity in the area. I know we've come forward and talked to council a few times about the DCC project that we've been undertaking since we initially received some grant funding, I believe back in 2021 to upgrade the trunk main for sewer right from the sewage lagoons up to Victoria Avenue. And that project that was completed on Victoria Avenue that caused a lot of grief and disturbance to the traveling public last year, that pipeline upgrade is directly intended to increase capacity for the known development that we're having in this area. This particular project was not a part of that, but certainly the green home with the number of units that were coming on board there was one of the driving factors. And also we had previously had some capacity concerns operationally that were a high risk. So there's a future phase of that project in the budget looking at going up to Baker or up to Beaumont or Baker through Beaumont Park this coming season. So we're certainly looking at it from that perspective. And there's been some work done through the green home work and through the development to the north of here to have assessments done of the water system to make sure that we do have capacity for the required flow for any domestic and fire flow use here. So when it comes to those infrastructure capacity items, we certainly do our due diligence and we don't have any concerns at this time. depending on the form and character and development and the demand of the development, we'll still do our due diligence and homework at that time to make sure that if there's any upgrades needed, that they need to meet the standards.
Thanks very much, Mike. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Blissett raised this, and I just want to follow up on it. So, Mike, just for the benefit of the community, when you think about city-owned lands and potential projects such as this, how would you characterize the amount of city-owned land that we have? We have a great deal and we have tons of options, or we have not very much and pretty limited options. Where would you place us on that continuum?
Councillor Ray, through the mayor, it is a difficult question. I don't have any metrics or percentages I can point to off the top of our head. I know staff and council has been presented previously with a city-owned land inventory report that we've done. This piece of property here represents a very, very, very small fraction of city-owned land that is undeveloped or developable. There's still a lot of work that would need to be done regarding, other future land use and developability or disposition of any city land or dedication of park and protection for public use. So not to make light of the decision that council's making regarding the impacts to the neighborhood or the impacts to the community, whether positive or negative through this proposal. I think it was alluded to, there's significant amount of adjacent green space in this area, which is a great benefit for this community. And the fact that there's some property adjacent to the creek being protected, I understand that, yes, you cannot necessarily develop right in proximity to or adjacent to the creek in some areas, but I don't think that necessarily devalues the fact that that's park dedication. Even though it can't be developed, having park dedication there further does support securing that in the long term as well.
Further? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion that council adopt City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan or Path to Cranbrook 2042 Amendment Bylaw number 4232/2026? Councillor Ray, Councillor Blissett, discussion. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. I'd just like to highlight, pulling from the staff report, that the Advisory Planning Commission has met and reviewed these items. And so for the motion that's before us right now, that they recommend that council approve the proposed OCP amendment, and that the vote to support was unanimous among the folks who were able to attend that meeting. And of course, they had quorum for that meeting. And I just think it's important to highlight that because the Advisory Planning Commission is an independent body of knowledgeable citizens in our community. So to me, it is important to note their recommendation to approve.
Thank you for that. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. Can I get a motion that council, that subject to council's consideration of the public input received up to and including the public hearing of February 23rd, 2026, council give third reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4233/2026. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, can I get a motion that council adopt the City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4233/2026? Mover, please, Councillor Blissett. Councillor Ray. Discussion, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. And similarly, I'd just like to note again, the Advisory Planning Commission unanimously supported council's approval of this amendment to the bylaw.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next bylaw for consideration is from our Finance Department regarding the 5-year financial plan bylaw. We have Charlotte on hand to give us a review of the report. The floor is yours, Charlotte.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is to present the 5-year financial plan, 2026 to 2030 bylaw to council for 3 readings. When the previous 5-year financial plan was adopted in April of 2025, the projected tax levy increase for 2026 was 7.9%. By the time the 2026 budget process was underway, the actual increase was higher. Some costs had risen more than expected through 2025, and some revenue didn't meet projections or were lost altogether. Through the early stages of the 2026 budget process, staff worked hard to identify new cost savings and revenue opportunities. As a result, a preliminary tax levy increase of 6.5% was presented to council at the November 26th meeting. At council's direction, 2 additional adjustments were made to further reduce the 2026 tax levy. The municipal grant program budget was held at the 2025 level, and the fire hall loan repayment, no longer required as the loan had been repaid, was not classified as a transfer to the facilities reserve. Together, these changes reduced the 2026 tax levy increase from 6.5 to 5.67%. At the January 21st, 2026 special meeting, council approved not funding the 2026 interest cost of $92,400 related to the Moyer Park Development Reserve, inter-reserve borrowing, and to increase the projected building permit revenue by a further $200,000 from $630,000 to $830,000. Council further approved additional funding of $39,000 split between the city and the regional district, 80-20, above the 2%, the planned 2% to the library. So these changes resulted in the final 2026 tax levy increase of 4.99%, and that is what council is, that is the increase that is reflected in the proposed bylaw that council is considering tonight. The projected tax levy increase for 2027 through 2030 are 2027, 6.45%, 2028, 6.32%, 2029, 5.94%, and 2030, 3.29%. So just reminding council that these are forecasts for future years, and a lot can change between now and even when we start to look at 2027. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to 5-year financial plan 2026 to 2030, bylaw number 4234, 2026. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, just wanted to reinforce your message that the numbers that are presented here very often end up looking quite different by the time the council of the day gets through their discussions. So if you're worried that they seem high, over 6% for a couple of the years, that is, it may end up there, but it is likely it's going to end up, my experience has been at less than that.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the finance team. I know this has been a lot of work putting this together, and especially getting the the tax levy increase to where it is. So I just want to say I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Charlotte, I could say it here at the end, I guess, council inquiries and whatnot, but I just want to make a note on this. Certainly what we're seeing, because it will affect our 5-year plan, what we've seen in building revenues this year, obviously, with record years, we're up 175% over last year. I think, to be modestly, I think we can expect what we see on the books now, a minimum of 100% increase next year over this year's. Possibly 2028, we could see possibly 100% beyond that. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is we're dealing with numbers that say your values were $350,000, say, last year, or in typical years in a 5-year trend. Now we're up to the 750,000 range. So, and then it could go up to 8, 9, maybe we even hit $1 million. But let's be honest, realistically, it has to either do this or this sooner or later, okay? I think though that we will have continued growth, but certainly not at that level. So that kind of levels out, even it drops a bit. That's going to be a decrease in revenue. And we have to recognize, and that could be substantial. And certainly what I look at right now is I believe that we probably need to look at our building revenues, what we're anticipating coming in, prioritize over the next number of years, what those revenues are going to be used for, whether, you know, to pay down your annual levy, or what's council's priority. I think we need a meeting going forward that this council maybe makes a policy decision or a policy statement at the very least. And I don't want to put a bunch of work on finance, but, you know, we've looked at, I think this council's done a really good job at putting policy in place, certainly the reserve and surplus policies. But we had targets on those, and we had minimum, maximum targets. I don't know how relevant the minimums certainly are right now. We've had discussions, and you know, there is some question to some of those. I'm wondering if maybe the reserve and surplus policies could be revised by finance so that we have sort of more accurate information today, and look at what we need to do with some of these building revenues moving forward to ensure that we're at least meeting the minimum. We have policies that we're not meeting the minimum of right now. And my fear is that the next, even if we're the next council, you know, or the next budget year, you start pinning down your tax rate with that, sooner or later, we're going to get caught. We're going to get caught very badly, you know, with depleting our surplus and our reserves, and then we are in big trouble. And then now we've got to rely on this borrowing. So just a thought, and if it's doable, and we could maybe have a committee of the whole meeting on that going forward someday. Any further comment, questions? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion? Oh, Wes? Are you opposed, Wes?
No.
You're delayed.
No, in favor.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to 5-year financial plan 2026 to 2030, bylaw number 4234 2026. Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give third reading to 5-year financial plan 2026 to 2030, bylaw number 4234 2026. Mover, please, Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Thank you, Charlotte, and a wonderful job. Finance, pass that along to your staff. You guys did an excellent job, and not just your staff, all the departments, department heads, and our administration. Thank you so much. Next up is a bylaw from corporate services regarding amendments to council procedure bylaw. I'll ask staff to give us an overview of this report, please.
Thank you.
Marnie, floor is yours.
Thank you. So the city's council procedure bylaw needs an update to enable full electronic participation for council members council meetings in the event of a state of local emergency, or if we have to actually physically evacuate this building. The proposed amendment will form part of the city's emergency management planning, in the event of an emergency. And what it will do is the amendment will cover off such events like forest fires threatening the community that are a result of a state of local emergency, or a local evacuation, a building fire, flood, gas leak, or something like that. And it will enable us to deal with it very quickly, still conduct council meetings, and then carry on for business continuity purposes.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to council procedure, amendment bylaw number 4238, 2026. Mover, please. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Bassett. Discussion. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Stetsky. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, I don't know if this is a question for you, Marnie, or for the CAO. if this is adopted, will we be doing a mock meeting at some point? Just as like a trial to see if it works?
Probably a good idea, yes.
Thank you.
I did
Test
talk
the
to,
system before we're.
yeah, I talked to
Next
IT and
week.
they
Yeah,
do
really.
have the capacity to do this. So yes, that's probably a very good idea.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Tetzke.
Yes, thanks, Ruth. I mean, currently we can be online for council meetings, as is Councillor Graham this evening. So this just clarifies that we can all be online?
Sure.
Councillor Stetsky to the mayor. Yes, what this is specific to is if the city is under a state of local emergency or city hall is being evacuated specifically. Right now, what's in our council procedure bylaw is we can have members of council come in electronically, but only a maximum of 2 at a time so that we can maintain quorum in this building. So if the power goes down, we can still continue with council meetings. But if we're in a state of local emergency, we have to do something. So we're going to allow full electronic participation.
Thank you for that explanation, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. This issue was raised just very recently in our discussions with emergency services. So I just want to thank management for turning this around so quickly. This is very important. We all now are very aware of the risk of wildfires, for example. So I just want to thank management for bringing this to the table so quickly.
Thank you. Further? Councillor Peabody?
Thank you. And this may be in the bylaw, so I apologize if it is. But it is, do the meetings have to be with video and audio, or could it just be audio?
Councillor Peabody through the mayor. What the community charter requires is that the members of the public have to be able to hear us or see us and hear us.
Okay.
At the very least, they have to be able to see it, or sorry, hear us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give second reading to council procedure amendment by law number 4238, 2026? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Do you have a question? Carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give third reading to council procedure amendment by law number 4238, 2026? Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Brissette. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next bylaw is from Corporate Services regarding the sign bylaw amendment. We have staff on hand to, Bradley, give us an overview.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a proposed sign amendment to the bylaw. What we're looking here is back in 2022, following council's direction, staff brought forward an amendment to actually limit the number of signs on the Highway 395 Boulevard, and that was to limit it to 20 signs. Once that happened, we realized there was a elevation of election signs along Victoria Avenue. So just ahead of the local election, we thought of bringing forward this amendment, and the rationale for limiting the signs to 5 along the entirety of Victoria Avenue, providing just a clear, simple, easy number for candidates to be accountable to the number of signs they're placing. Still provides candidates the ability to have a sign on each really primary corridor along Victoria Avenue. And accounts as well for the fact that we have multiple mayor, councillor, school district, MLA, and MP candidates for all elections. And that it will also limit the volume of signs that may potentially affect traffic or pedestrian sightlines on primary city roads. So there's some housekeeping. There's the key amendment provision to limit the signs to 5 along Victoria Avenue. And then as well, there's also provision for adding fence and bridge limitations for specifically on city-owned land and property.
Thanks, Bradley. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to sign amendment by law number 4239, 2026? Councillor Bassett, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody.
And just an observation, so these political signs potentially go up to 4 feet by 8 feet signs. So since bylaw doesn't deal with sizes at all, just be aware that you could have 5 4x8s along Victoria Avenue during an election for each candidate.
Through the mayor to Councillor Stetsky, the sign bylaw currently actually does have exceeding for political sign on public or private property not to exceed 3 meters in square area. So if there are actually larger signs, then that would be something that could be noted for bylaw to potentially enforce.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Bradley, I wonder, do you see us playing a little bit of like sort of cat and mouse with how the bylaw is written, where, first we did the Strip and now we're doing Victoria, and that we might be coming back and doing another avenue in 4 years? So I wonder, like, instead of just saying, Victoria or Van Horn, could we just say any avenue in Cranbrook or any street in Cranbrook can't have more than 5 signs? And just do a blanket approach as opposed to just one street or the other.
Through the mayor to Councillor Peabody, if that's council's direction, that could be an avenue that we could explore. I think the thought was with this specific amendment was the main priority of the complaints back in 2022 was along the Highway 3 section. And then with this, we did just have an abundance along Victoria. So there is a potential that this may be, like you mentioned, the cat and mouse game, or maybe there's some other signs that end up being located elsewhere. The reality is, though, is that with this sign bylaw as it is, election signs are still permitted on private property. It's really just focusing on municipal boulevards and specifically on land that is city owned and limiting that amount. So there could still be additional signs around the community. And I think the thought process was with 5 was just having a really easy number to be able to keep candidates accountable, and you can count it on one hand, literally. It was kind of the thought process behind it. But yeah, we were very open to considering other elements, or if we need to look at this again in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking on this for a second. Yeah, so I guess it's wonder is like, we do Victoria and just see how it goes, and we can leave this up to the next council. Away we go.
Councillor Rape.
Thank you, Mayor. So I certainly support the first 2 bullet points regarding amendments, so section 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4 regarding Victoria Avenue. I had a few questions about section 2.5 in terms of prohibiting political signs on fences and bridges. So, hey, I've only been involved in one election. It was the 2022 local government election. And in that election, it seemed normal, and I don't know if, anyways, at that time, it was normal to put political signs on city-owned fences and city-owned bridges. And I've gathered from folks who've been involved in way more elections than I have, like that's a very long-standing tradition in Cranbrook. So were there concerns from the public about fences and bridges?
Through the mayor to Councillor Ray, that is what happened. We received an influx of complaints from bylaw about sightlines and visibility near intersections, specifically with signs being placed on bridges and fences. So that's why the provision was brought forward to add that down to city-owned land. So there's some specific areas, and for an example, maybe like the corner of Baker Park, that would limit the sign there. There's as well near Rotary Park, there's a little bit of fencing that's along there in that intersection, which is quite busy, as well as near the mall property.
Great. Well, that's good to know. There was feedback about that. And then on a related note, I recall on one of the previous elections recently for other levels of government, there seemed to be confusion in the community about where on municipal land people could put signs. So for section 36.5, it states that election signs may only be posted, as you've said, on private property with the owner's permission, so that's clear, and on municipal boulevard fronting private property. So was that part of the bylaw like new in 2022, or has that been in the bylaw forever and people just didn't follow it?
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Ray, that was a part of the original bylaw from 2013. It probably was just maybe missed in terms of complaint-driven behavior to bylaw to enforce those provisions. And yeah, so it's on a municipal, the election signs may only be erected in the following locations: on private property with the permission of the owner or occupier, or on a municipal boulevard fronting private property.
Okay, sounds good. So my thought is, I mean, I think that's really helpful clarification because it is different from what the practice had been in the community. So for the coming election, you know, for management's consideration, when we look at our communications with the public, it might be helpful to give some examples. Like my read of that is then there should be no political signs on the edges of parks because that would be a municipal boulevard, but it's a municipal boulevard that fronts public property. So there should be no political signs on the edges of any parks.
Yes, through the mayor to council, Ray, that is correct. Yeah, there should be no political signs on city-owned park. And the reason for that too is because during an election, those are city-owned land. So we limit any signs being placed in terms of being unbiased during election season.
Very good. Thank you.
Councillor Graham, then back to Councillor Statsky.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not overly concerned. I think there's good changes here. The one thing I will flag is the same as Councillor Ray, the section 30, the 2.5. I would like to know how many complaints there were. I feel there wasn't many. I've been on multiple campaigns since 2015, and there's very specific spots where you put signs on fences, and it seems like it's the same 4 people that always complain about them. So I would really question that. So I definitely don't agree with that part, and that was probably enough to make me not vote for this. I think everything else is fine, but I don't like that part. And the other thing, just for clarification, to stem off again what Councillor Ray was saying, so any of the boulevard in front of, say, McDonald's or Dairy Queen or the other Tim Hortons, that boulevard fronts a road, so that would also be a no sign zone, correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Graham, I am unsure of that answer. Maybe if engineering or someone will be able to help us with that question on the definition of that city-owned land specifically.
Councillor Graham, through the mayor, we'd have to look at that. We had some discussion ahead of the meeting here, just as far as what is termed city land, whether that includes right of ways or roads as well. So we may have to look a little bit from an interpretation perspective to clarify that ahead of time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I just stem off that because when you read the bylaw, it says that it can be a city boulevard that fronts private land. So that road literally stops you from fronting private land. It's that boulevard, the road, and then the private property. So I think it's something worth looking into. And then what would be good too for communication around this, I think, would be a map that kind of highlights a few no-go areas that used to be totally fine, just so everybody gets an understanding of the changes.
Thank you. Councillor Statsky. Nothing. You good? Just based on the question, would council like to defer this? Would council give staff a little more time? There's no urgency. I think we're looking more towards the next civic election in October. Give staff a little more time to kind of go through and find solutions to some of these unanswered questions. Councillor Statsky.
And so I'll just throw this out right now, but the other part of this was enforcement by bylaw and whether or not we have some standards, because I know there have been times when you get notification from bylaw to remove a sign, you take it down, and the other party signs remain up for a couple of days still before they actually come down. So I'm not sure whether we should have something in there that says, you know, if you're contacted by bylaw, you've got 24 hours to take the sign down, or bylaw will remove it for you and attribute the cost to you.
Good. Would we like somebody like to make a motion to defer, or do you want to vote on the motion right now? Councillor Popoff, motion to defer. Your seconder, please. Councillor Ray, further discussion? All in favor to defer? Yeah, that's unanimous to defer. Thank you. First item of new business tonight is from our finance department regarding a fire engine truck equipment financing. Charlotte, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. through to council. So this report is to secure financing to fund the acquisition of the Fire and Emergency Services fire engine truck. The purchase of the fire engine was approved by council during budget deliberations and was included in the city's 5-year financial plan back in 2024. So as council knows, there's a long lead time on the build of a fire apparatus. We are expecting the delivery of this fire truck within the next few weeks. So we are tonight seeking council's authorization to proceed with equipment borrowing. So as we typically do, the equipment we borrow for the fire apparatus, and it is based on MFA's 5-year equipment borrowing program.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that council authorizes staff to proceed with the equipment financing application under Section 175 of the Community Charter to the Municipal Finance Authority of BC for a 5-year term agreement with no right of renewal in the amount of $1,257,904 for the purpose of funding the acquisition of a fire and emergency service fire engine truck. Move up, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody, discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, so as CEO Ferto, just for the benefit of the citizens of Cranbrook that don't know, can you explain why we have to buy a new fire truck and how long we have between purchases?
So Councillor Stetsky through the mayor, we followed the general guidelines by the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, and so it's typically around 20 years. However, in the past, there's been some discussion around the fact that the fire engines are seeing less wear and tear that potentially is suitable to call the vehicle needing to be changed in that cycle. However, today, in our current world, what used to be, call out to response maybe 3 times a week, we're seeing engines having to roll out for the number of medical calls that the Modern Society brings, anywhere from 11 to say 20 sometimes per day, which is exceeding the sort of rolling sort of maximums of the large equipment. So I think the standards are what they used to be seen as quite generous. They might not be seen that way very soon in the future. It's just a large trend everywhere that any community involved in first responder services is seeing a huge amount of wear and tear on the equipment, much more so. So yes, there was a time in the past that NFPA seemed like a very hard standard that exceeded kind of the wear and tear seeing on the vehicles. It's actually the other way now. So yeah, we follow the standards.
Further, council? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Charlotte. Next up is from Engineering and Development Services regarding Baker Street and 10th Avenue intersection control. This should be interesting. Now we'll go to Curtis here.
Thank you, Mayor Price and Council. As I believe everybody is aware, there was a failure at that signalized intersection last year that rendered the lights non-operable. So there's a temporary 4-way stop in place right now. So we've commissioned a study, hired ISL Engineering and Land Services to review what options we could look at going forward. The report's attached to the staff report from ISL. However, just to give a high level, both a always stop control and a signalized intersection will work at this location. However, a signalized intersection with traffic lights is not warranted by quite a lot, given the use in the vehicle loading and the pedestrian activity. It's only scored 22 out of 100, where the 100 is the minimum required. So quite a lot. However, given the study, and it doesn't really change it if it's signalized or an always stop, there are some issues with geometry, pedestrian exposure, and parking related conflicts. These are both inherent if it's a 4-way stop or an all-way control. So with either way, staff would recommend that we look at decreasing the lanes to 1 in each direction and remove the turning lanes because they're not warranted to be protected. Install curb extensions to reduce the pedestrian crossing distance. And also to create that buffer space between parking and the intersection. So if somebody's reversing out of the angled parking stall, there's less, you've got a little bit more reaction time before that collision point. Given that Baker Street is in need of repairs in the next number of years, but it's not on the current work plan right now, we would be looking at doing the temporary curb extensions with some type of concrete and painting. So because both will work, even though lights are not warranted, giving council the option to direct which one they would like to see staff move forward with option one being an always stop and implementing the safety improvements, and that would be funded out of this year's capital program. Or if council would like, we can design and install traffic signals at that intersection and include the safety improvements as well, but that would have to come out of next year's capital program in 2027, just because we don't, we're already well under design for this year, and we just don't have the budget to accommodate it, unfortunately.
Thank you, Curtis. So we have a request for decision by staff on this item. Can I please have a mover and a seconder for item 102? Councillor Brissette.
For option one?
Option one. Seconder, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. Councillor Brissette.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the report. I mean, sort of anecdotally, I go through downtown multiple times a day, and because of the change to the four-way stop, I now go down 10th. I used to avoid it when it was a traffic light, and I also walk through there. And yes, there's some adjustments because oftentimes many people are sort of overly courteous. And it causes some problems. But generally, I think it's a great improvement, and I'm very happy to see it, and I'm pleased to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks again for the study. I think it's really important to be able to share that with the community, that this does not meet the quantitative requirement in terms of going back to traffic lights there. And $35,000, I think that's going to be excellent value for our money to have those curb extensions. And if possible, I know we have the nice visuals in the report. We have a wonderful community that supports the arts. If we have any opportunity to partner with some of our local artists, I think that would add a real positive visual element to our downtown to have those extensions also painted. So I'm really pleased, and I think again it shows the potential for what is actually a simple solution to say we're going to eliminate those turning lanes, because that of course does add additional complexity, and we're just going to have the one lane. So that's going to make it simpler for vehicles and simpler for pedestrians. So I really appreciate the solution that we've got on the table.
Councillor Stetsky, then Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. So who has priority in British Columbia? Like pedestrians have the right of way at intersections? And if so, people should know that. The only concerns I've seen with the four-way stop have been pedestrians and traffic not really respecting them crossing the road. So do you know whether the law says one or the other has priority in BC? Because I just don't know.
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, it's my understanding that pedestrians have the right to cross first at a always stop like this.
Because if it becomes an issue, maybe some signage would help people learn that. The second thing was bicycles. If we go to the one lane, bicycles then I guess just become another automobile really in the lineup. Is that kind of how it would work?
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, that's correct. A bicycle or the other larger wheeled trikes and things like that are technically vehicles in this case, so they would have to share the road with the vehicles. And again, this is a temporary solution because when we do the full rebuild of Baker, we'll have to involve more public engagement in council and work on that multimodal design to accommodate active transportation users.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not opposed to it. I think the four-way works well. I just worry about some of those bump outs. Will that affect the guy? I know we don't get a lot of big truck traffic, but you do get some of those shorter trucks or delivery trucks. Like, is that going to create any kind of turn issues with turn radiuses for that? I don't have a lot of faith in traffic engineers over the past few debacles that I feel I've seen. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of something like that, but I am in favor of the four-way stop. But how will this impede any kind of truck traffic along that way?
Councillor Graham, through the mayor, we'll make sure it's staff that we review that for sure as part of our design work that we undertake. It's likely that we're going to undertake this design in-house this year just to try and save costs and to try to get more roads done. However, given the lane configuration now, I don't know if it's really going to change the truck turning movements and the radiuses of those corners, because we're just removing the lane and moving it over. But we'll definitely have that look at in more detail when we do the detailed design.
Thank you for that, Councillor Graham. And Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I agree with getting rid of the turning lanes. Like, to me, that seems like it disperses the amount of traffic into two lanes, because not everyone's going straight through. Some are turned off onto other streets, and might prevent further traffic backup, especially in busy times. So I'm just wondering the thought process behind that. The reasoning.
Councillor Peabody, through the mayor, given the volume of traffic, they're not warranted right now. And it's also to reduce the number of lanes for complexity of the intersection. So it's both vehicular and pedestrians can see what's going on when they either go through the intersection or go into the intersection or cross it. So it's less conflict points, so less areas for collision and accidents to occur, essentially, especially when it's not warranted from a traffic. And when I mean not warranted, it's the level of service, it's called, in the backing up in the queuing lanes. It's in the timing that you have to wait to get through the intersection still acceptable, and it's not a failing level. As we can see in the report, the levels are still very level A, level B, a very high level service. So you're not waiting for more than a few seconds, whether it's turning lanes or not.
Okay. So just supplemental, if I may. So compared to the four-way stops on Kootenay Street, which those have turning lanes, do they see significantly more traffic than what this one does?
Councillor Peabody, through the mayor. Yes, the turning lanes on Kootenay Street and say 6th, that intersection is almost near a failing capacity, is actually there. It's something that we need to look at signalizing. It's part of our DCC bylaw. So it does receive significant more traffic in that whole corridor, say Industrial Road 1 and 6th Street Northwest 2. That corridor needs to be signalized because of those four-way stops have reached capacity.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I would think that reducing it to one lane would make it much safer for pedestrians as well. Because where those concerns are is, two cars lined up and the pedestrians coming across and the person on the turning lane doesn't bother to look.
Yeah, certainly from my perspective, traffic going either way, is really quite slow anyways. If you look at on Baker Street and those, the two streets that are immediately impacted, that's probably where, the majority of our parking is done. So people are in and out of that parking there. So traffic moves very slow. I don't even know if we got a 30 kilometer an hour traffic moving through there. So I think certainly at this time, that's the best decision at this point in time. As was mentioned earlier, we've got future infrastructure upgrades that are required on Baker Street. Why do this now and then dig it all up later? And, to me, this is a very strategic moved right now and then part of a good strategic plan. So yeah, thank you for that. Yep. Councillor Peabody.
Sorry, one more quick question. Charlotte, do we have a reserve fund for streetlights?
Councillor Peabody, through the mayor, not specifically. It would be coming out of the general fund capital reserve, and more likely out of the road program.
Okay.
Yeah, so not specifically, no.
Yeah, no, my train of thought here is this hopefully will work as a four-way stop. There's also a chance it won't. And as far as what I can see, streetlights are not getting any more affordable. And I'm assuming there's other ones in the city that are, maybe on the verge of failing too. Like, I wonder if it's a good idea to start setting more money aside to replace streetlights that may be coming due, as opposed to trying to take it out of a one-time hit to the tax levy.
Councilor Peabody, through the mayor, that's a great point. I know we've brought forward a few times recently when it comes to infrastructure funding levels. The road funding does asphalt, it does curb, gutter, sidewalk, pathways, does much of some of our storm sewer surface infrastructure, boulevard improvements, street lighting, and traffic lighting. So they are becoming much more costly, not just to construct, but to maintain. So when we're looking at situations like Curtis alluded to with the 6th Street intersection and the highway intersection there, the Ministry of Transportation can require those upgrades at some of those signalized intersections and just send us a bill. Obviously, we'd have a little bit of warning on that. So I think that's why we really need to consider this is a perfect opportunity to reduce that burden from an infrastructure funding perspective. I know the public may look at it as taking away something that was there or taking away a service, but from an affordability perspective and a sustainability perspective, a lot of communities are looking at it from a best practice of decommissioning assets that cost more than what they need to in order for us to have funding available in the places that we do need them. And the consequence of something failing here is a little bit of a delay. The consequences of failure at a highway intersection is much more of an impact. When it comes to funding levels and reserves, that's certainly a conversation that does need to happen, and we're going to be looking at it because there's so many different infrastructure asset types that come out of the road funding. We do need to take a strategic look and probably increasing those reserve amounts. The mayor had some great comments on that previously with any additional or unexpected income that comes forward. Replenishing those strategic infrastructure reserves, it would be a high priority from our department as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective, Mike. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Now we have from Rec and Culture regarding the Spirit of the Rockies bylaw fee waiver request. We have Trevor on hand. A new pen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On February 9th, regular council meeting, council received 2 pieces of correspondence from the Spirit of the Rockies Society requesting field waiver fees for the soccer and slow pitch tournaments that come with the festival. Council referred this to staff and staff met with Spirit of the Rockies Society to find a common ground. As we know, Spirit of the Rockies is the largest civic celebration we have in Cranbrook. It's been going on since 1966. And I believe the slow pitch tournament is in its 46th or 47th year now. In my short time here in Cranbrook, this will be my 4th year of coming to council with a request for a reduction in fees. So as part of taking on this task and working with Spirit of the Rockies Society, we talked about venturing into a bigger agreement that states Spirit of the Rockies is, the civic celebration and give them their own identity and therefore their own fee or bylaw fee moving forward. That'll save us from having the same conversation every year, and it will also help Spirit of the Rockies in their planning for future years to come.
Thank you, Trevor. So we have a request for decision on this as well. We've got item 1 and item 2. Can I get a Councillor Tetsky, item 1 or 2?
Option 2, please.
Option 2. Councillor Ray. Seconder. Yeah. Discussion. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that management has brought this solution forward. Just in terms of the council contingency fund, I'm a broken record on this. So our current policy is it's for unexpected events. And as Trevor has alluded to, of course, this has been an annual ask. So it's obviously not unexpected. So it does not fit council contingency for that reason. And in addition, our current policy recommended limit for our council contingency fund is $500. So that's a long ways from $7,400. And I believe our total council contingency budget for the year is $10,000. So it's not a fit for the council contingency fund for those reasons. And I think this is a positive solution to move forward and to have a planned approach where there's no surprises and helps to establish that good working relationship between the city and Spirit of the Rockies.
So I'll just read the resolution one more time that council declared the festival an official civic celebration and embed it into the Recreation and Culture Fees and Charges bylaw, a specific rate for the Spirit of the Rockies annual festival. Call the question. Oh, I'm sorry. One more question, Councillor Graham. My apologies, I missed you there.
All good. Yeah, I think it makes the most sense in a way that we can work with a group that wants to do this festival. It is a big thing for our community, and we get there's less and less things, big things happening. I know there's, you get a little bit, but whenever you get a group that's wanting to take it on and continue doing something that they've done for a long time, it's a good thing for us. So I do like seeing this being embedded in.
Thank you, Councillor Peabody. Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you. I think the only thing I'd like to add is that I would still like to see damage deposits required for usage of the fields. I think if they have some skin in the game, there's a better chance they'll take care of our assets.
Thank you, Councillor Stetsky.
And just to clarify, this is concerning field fees, so primarily soccer, baseball, but it does not preclude them applying for grants for other aspects of the festival.
Mayor Price, through to Councillor Stetsky, that is correct.
Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Trevor. Great solution. Final report tonight is from Corporate Services regarding the 2026 communication strategy. And we have the good doctor here, Chris Settle's going to give us an overview of this.
Thank you. So as we do annually, I bring forward the proposed 2026 communication strategy, which really helps to guide my office's work over the course of the year. New this year, as council will recall, we did have a committee of the whole back in early February, where you did get a bit of a preview and to provide some input, which I want to thank each of you for being part of that. I did make note of a few of the takeaways from that meeting. The first being the development of a council email response policy, just making sure that there's clarity around who's responsible to respond to public emails. Just following up on that policy and procedure was created back in 2023 and adopted by council. And in the background of the report, I did provide a link to that for you. As well, looking at expanding potentially the reach of public information mailouts around public hearings and other public consultations. That may require amending some policies and bylaws, but I have embedded that in the draft strategy as an action item for 2026 to look into. And a couple other items, looking at developing and issuing some larger public information pieces throughout the year that are more thematic in nature, water as an example. Again, creating a light, easy to read sort of year in review piece at the end of each year. Those aren't specifically put into an action plan, but something that we will add to our sort of operational year-to-year messaging that we do. So with that, yeah, I will turn it back to you.
Yep, I'll just, thank you, Chris. Can I get a motion that council approve the proposed 2026 communication strategy as presented? Councillor Bissett, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks very much, Chris, and great work. We've come a long way. Certainly, our media and communications is certainly looks a lot different than it did just a couple of years ago. So thank you very much. We have one administrative update tonight from Corporate Services regarding social media pages. I'll ask staff to review the update, please.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to bring this forward to council. In discussion with Chief Driver, with the fire department, we're looking at abandoning the use of X, which used to be known as Twitter. To share city information going forward, effective March 1st. A number of things have happened over the last few years with X, especially since COVID. We're seeing a lot of reports of harmful content, Grok AI lately, creating some inappropriate images and those types of things. And this type of content and, what we see is sort of insufficient safeguards really in general. We've really lost confidence in using that as an avenue to share city information. And I guess to add to that too, we typically see of all the social media channels we use, that has the lowest engagement rate. Very, very few people ever see a post that we put out. So in some respects, it's almost a staff time saver to kind of just stop using it and focus more on where people are. And I guess the final little piece I wanted to add here too is that social media still remains the single most preferred avenue of receiving city information by the public here in Cranbrook. And that was a result that we found in the citizen survey that we conducted last fall. So we're just, again, trying to streamline our social media use and make sure that we're getting the message out to where people are and reading it. So.
Thanks very much, Christian. Yeah, that is an issue today is which stream, which platform you're getting out on. Everybody's on a different medium, it seems, right now. Anything further questions or comments, staff or council? No? Well, thanks, Chris. We have 3 pieces of correspondence tonight. First piece is a letter from BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program requesting support by way of a letter to the Minister of Health supporting continued funding for the program. Didn't we do that? Didn't I send one out? No, I thought maybe we did. Okay. Anyways, I have a draft motion here. If we have a mover and a seconder. That council received the correspondence from Heather O'Hara, BC Association of Farmer Market, dated February 2nd, 2026, regarding a request for a letter of support for the 2026 BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program season. And further, that council approve a letter of support under the mayor's signature to the Honorable Josie Osborne, Minister of Health. Councillor Bissett, Councillor Stetsky, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We did that. We have 2 other pieces of correspondence. One from Mount Baker Secondary School Prom Parent Fundraising Committee, and one from the Habitat for Humanity Southeast BC. Received for information? Yeah, okay, we'll receive that for information, staff. That brings us to mayors and councils reports and inquiries tonight, and we'll start with Councillor Stetsky.
Sorry, 12.3, the Habitat for Humanity. That's, we took.
I missed one? Oh, okay.
Few things I participated in on February 10th. I went to the Tunaha Open House. It's great to see the work that they're doing. And of course, to have a piece of Bonnie's fry bread is worth the trip as well. It is really good to see the kind of things that the Tunaha Nation are involved in and the great work that they're doing. February 12th was the mayor's talk. Thank you, Mayor. I think you did a good job of covering the accomplishments for the city. That was for the Rotary clubs and the chamber. And that same day, the Arts Council building reopened after some renovations, and they've got some great, the pottery room is exceptional now. So if you haven't had a chance to go down to the Arts Council building, please do. February 14th was anti-bullying Pink the Rink night. Great to see all of our bucks in their pink uniforms. February 18th, Studio Stage Door, 1,000 Clowns. It is a really good play. Be prepared that you're going to be there till probably close to 10:30. So plan your evening accordingly. But great acting and a great story. Coming up, February 25th is Pink Shirt Day for everybody to get dressed in pink, anti-bullying day. So please remember that. February 28th is the Symphony of the Kootenay. That's on Saturday night. I think it's sold out. We're going to check to see whether there's 1 or 2 tickets hiding somewhere, but it's going to be a great concert. Question for Mike, March 2nd to 6th water advisory. Is that in essence a boil water week then, potentially, or 4 days, or what's the expectation around that week?
Councillor Sesky through the mayor. I don't have that exact information on my fingertips, but it is an advisory related to some planned maintenance work that is happening. So I'd certainly encourage everybody just take a look at what has been put out there. I believe there is boil water standard information that comes in through Interior Health on there. I think what we're going to need to do is just do a good job of monitoring the time that's going to be in effect and making sure that we work with our communications team mostly to understand the duration of what that impact is going to be.
Okay, good. So far I've seen lots of dates, but I'm not sure whether that meant we're going to be boiling our water all for the entire time or not. So we'll watch for updates then. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. In one of the letters of opposition for the 5th Street rezoning was from Joshua Fenema, who's the maintenance person at St. Mary's School. And he brought up an issue that has nothing to do with the rezoning, but I thought I would just ask staff about it. There's the new curb that goes along the street towards St. Mary's School and then goes up towards 5th Street. And he's saying that the curb goes, he's saying halfway across the entrance into St. Mary's School. And I don't know, Councillor Bassett, have you noticed it driving in?
I drive over it a fair bit.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Is it fine?
Well, in the wintertime, you don't notice it. Like, it just becomes a very wide driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just with the snow.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't know if it's something for staff to look into. But yeah, it seems odd if the curb does go halfway across the entrance into the parking lot.
Councillor Peabody through the mayor, through some survey work that was done related to the park dedication and confirming property boundaries, it was found that there is some trespassing infrastructure from the school on city land or on adjacent property. We've went out and met with them in person just to clarify through the development process. We're going to look and seeing what we can rectify or how we can accommodate. It's just a legacy issue where there's some extra space for making it wider. So if there's some work that we can do to clean it up at that time, we'll look at taking care of it. But we have met in person with school representatives to make sure that everybody's going to play nice and make sure that any improvements there are mutually beneficial. But we may have to rectify some of those legacy trespassing issues.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Bissett,
Nothing to report.
Councillor Raitt,
Thank you, Mayor. On February 10th, I was pleased to attend a portion of the East Kootenay Zonal Immigration Program Strategic Planning Session, and our head librarian, Ursula Briggle, was able to attend the second half of the session, and I was pleased to share a summary document from that with Mayor and Council. So that's a project through the Columbia Basin Alliance for Literacy. So it's good we have some city connection and awareness of that project. On February 13th, I was pleased to pop into the Natanic event on the Pro D Day at Key City Theatre. So that was a great partnership among multiple agencies. So the city, Holly, our staff person, had a city contingent there. The Ktunaxa Nation was involved. BGC Cranbrook. Save On Foods was there with cookies. Anyways, great positive event on a Pro D Day, and they said it was their third year and their best attendance, and yeah, lots of happy kids and lots of energy in there, so that was great. On February 14th, I popped into the Family Day event at the Cranbrook History Center, and they had lots of interesting stations set up in the Royal Alexandra Hall. So anyways, it's always a pleasure to see what's going on at the History Center. Most recently, this past Friday, I was pleased to represent Mayor and Council at the Heritage Dinner. So thank you very much to the Kin Club of Cranbrook and also the Eagles for hosting that event. It was a great turnout and people had a great time. And Jason Wielden, as usual, provided a very entertaining MC program with a variety of jokes of various kinds that everyone enjoyed. And I would also add, I'd encourage folks, if you're interested, to attend 1,000 Clowns. Kudos to everybody at the Cranbrook Community Theatre, and especially to Michael Grossman for bringing this project to life at the tender age of 70-something. It's a lifelong goal, and so it's great to see it coming to fruition.
Councillor Popoff,
Nothing to report.
another report. Councillor Graham.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, really nothing to report. I'd like to thank Councillor Ray for covering for me at the Heritage Dinner. It was a busy day, a couple busy days there. I had the College of the Rockies fire recruit graduation, which was very nice to see. Some nice, I believe it was 18 new candidates that are going to be available out there. And I had the honor on Friday to visit Mr. Mickey Proctor on his 100th birthday and present him with a certificate, the city certificate honoring his 100th. Mickey was born and raised in Cranbrook. So, you know, it's always special to do the 100th for anybody that's 100. And but somebody born and raised here, you know, it's really quite neat. And you know, I don't know how many of you know Mickey Proctor, but we used to call Mr. and Mrs. Proctor when we were younger, the fountain of youth of Cranbrook. They found it somewhere. But they were Ken and Barbie before Ken and Barbie dolls were even made, really. But honest to God, they both look so young. And, you know, what's really, really nice is they're very, very mobile. And, you know, they've still got everything together. You can carry on a great conversation, extremely healthy. You would think they were 80 years old, you know, or in their 70s. So, yeah, that was a really good day. And that's all I've got. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Bissett, Councillor Peabody, all in favor? Adjourn. Thanks, guys.